In this video, we're going to look at the procedure for honing a chisel or a plane iron by hand. Now, the chisel in the example here is a bit dull. The edge has a little bit of damage. There's a few chips in it. So we're going to hone this to really see if we can improve that edge. Now, as it's a bevel edge chisel, we want to be aiming for somewhere between 20 and 30 degrees on the edge. Different chisels want different angles. And again, plane irons tend to have a stamp that will specify on the front what angle it should be set to. We're going to slacken the bolts off to fit it into the honing guide, and you're going to see these little parallel lines that are notched onto it. That will help us get the chisel sitting straight in the guide. The only other thing is how much it's going to come forward. This little plastic guide here has some holes in it, which will let us see what angle we're going to get depending on how much the chisel's poking out of the edge. So we're going to set that in, and then we're going to tighten the bolts up to make sure that it's going to stay in the guide at this particular depth while we start honing it. Again, these honing guides work for most types of chisels, and they'll work for your plane irons as well. The next thing we're going to take a look at is the oil stone. Now, with these ones, we've got wooden mounts. Sometimes they are just held in these plastic mounts that they come in. Your oil stone's typically got two sides on them, and they do have a grit in a similar way to glass paper. On this one, the darker side is our rougher one. So we're going to be starting with that, our coarser grit. Now, the clue's in the name. So the oil stone needs a bit of honing oil on the top to help it to hone fully and smoothly. So we're just going to put a little run of that oil on. Now the procedure here is very, very simple. We're essentially just holding it firmly against the top and going for a backwards and forwards motion. We've set the angle up in the guide, so it's going to gradually hone down the surface of that chisel. You can kind of see a little bit in there that we're starting to get a little bit of a shiny tip on it. Now we're going to skip through this a little faster with a bit of editing magic, because this can take a little bit of time depending on how much of the blade is damaged. You will know that you've honed it down enough when you can start to see that shiny texture on the tip of the blade, and you should start to feel a burr forming on the back of it, a little lip of metal that's coming off that will need tidied up at the end. Once we've got all those chips and dents and everything out, and we've got most of the work done, we're going to flip the oil stone over to the smoother side and just give it a little bit more work. The more polished we can get it, the sharper it's going to be, and frankly the better a cut it's going to make. Now, a sharp tool, in my opinion, is always a safe tool. You're not having to force it. It just works properly, and that really makes a big difference to the work that you're making. Now that we've got this nice and smooth and tidy, the last thing we need to do is take the burr off the reverse of it. So we're going to take it out of the honing guide, and this time we're going to work on the flat side. Now, taking the burr off is very simple. It should only really take a couple of passes over on the oil stone, but I've topped up the oil a little bit here. So I'm just keeping it nice and flat. And you can either go backwards and forwards or in a little figure of 8, but either way, you want to take that burr off until you can't feel it on the reverse surface anymore. Your chisel should now be ready to go, but it's always worth testing it out on a piece of scrap wood to make sure that you've got it ready and that it's nice and tidy. And if you have any doubts about this, ask your teacher and they will help you with this. But we can see now this is honed how easily it's cutting through the edge of this piece of scrap.